Coming up on today's episode, we're talking about personal journeys and the wisdom of knowing where you are on your own path. All this and more on The Perfect Route. Welcome to another episode of The Perfect Route. I'm Dr. Bill Sodeman, and I'm pleased to have with us today Melissa Cruz. How are you doing, Melissa?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. Could you do a brief introduction of yourself for the listeners and viewers out there?
Yeah, so my name is Melissa Cruz, as we just learned, and I am a mother of two. I own Iris Bloom Coaching, where I get to help women find clarity, build confidence, and alignment in their life and business.
Okay. And that's a wonderful thing to offer to the business community. When you talk about clarity, um, what exactly are you going for with the clarity? Is it professional clarity? Is it something else?
So initially with clients, they are seeking professional clarity. And oftentimes what I find that it's actually deeper than that and it's more personal. And
Uh-huh.
so they're struggling with finding clarity about how they're showing up, how they're spending their time. There's a little bit of guilt behind it. There's old programming that they're carrying with them in adulthood that they've brought since childhood. And so it's finding clarity on what stories they keep holding on to that are no longer serving and are not true, and then rebuilding the truth and those new stories that are actually true and applicable to their life right now. Once we can break through those things, then kind of the business things start to happen, and the clarity seems to get easier to find after we break through those walls.
That is so interesting. And clarity on the story is, I find that really helpful in my coaching practice and my consulting because so often I find, even with myself, the story isn't clear. We think
Mhm.
we know it. And when we try to articulate it, it's like, wait a moment, there's something else going on here.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what first pulled you into the world of learning and personal development? I'm curious about that.
So I was thinking about this, and I would say this goes back to my childhood. So I'm not like normal, I think, than maybe some other women. As a child, I was not the girl that thought about a big wedding. I wasn't thinking about buying a house. Like I was a young girl who wanted to own a business. I don't know why. I didn't know anybody in my life that owned a business, but I was very adamant about I knew being a Hispanic woman, I knew what people saw me as and what they thought my story was going to be. And I knew that I didn't want to become what society says I was good enough to be. And so even as a child, I knew about having to learn to work hard, earning what I had. Um, some of it I was trusting other people. At the time when I went to graduate high school, it was all about the 4-year degree. And even 4 years after that, it was all about the 2-year degree, and so
Mhm.
um, it was just interesting for me. I always did what other people, as far as development goes, what they suggested, because they were obviously older and they were kind of giving me guidance. But I would say it does for me go back to childhood. And there was a time in my life where I wasn't really applying myself. And, of course, my parents reprimanded me for that. And it kind of really changed how my choice and how I showed up because I ended up being punished like a whole school year because I was doing so poorly. And then I applied myself and I ended up getting into like AP classes and all these things. And I learned, at that age, if I just applied myself, doors were opening, right? Opportunities were opening, bigger things were opening up for me. And I just kept carrying that on when I went to college and when I went to the workforce and that kind of thing. But it started with not wanting to be what people saw me as and wanting to just be more than anybody has ever seen in my family.
Awesome. I love your description of your journey because, as we mentioned earlier, people don't know what their story is going to turn out to be when they start on the story,
Right.
and you've had quite the adventure. How's your perspective changed over time?
My perspective has changed over time in the sense that I know now that I have a choice.
Okay.
I had thoughts and feelings about what I wanted my personal development and education to look like, but I didn't feel like I had a place and a voice to say what I wanted. And so I kind of just follow the trajectory again of what people said, hey, this is your path to success. This is what everybody is doing. And again, nobody in my family graduated from college. So I thought that was a right step for me as well. And
Mhm.
so now I know, especially now with so many different ways we can learn, that I do have a voice, I do have a choice, and I get to choose in the way that I want to go down my path and my journey, especially when it comes to development and education.
Okay. Y and that's so important to not only remind yourself about it, but to remind other people about. We take it for granted sometimes that, we have a limited set of choices or we've already made our choice,
Mhm.
and we're just going to ride the rails on that. Um,
Well, and
and
as
that
young adults, not
Oh,
to
go
cut
ahead.
you off, but,
Oh,
as
go ahead.
young adults, especially when you're under 18, you're really looking for the leadership in your life. What do my parents want me to do? What is, the guidance counselor at school expect me to do? Like, what is supposed to be the next thing? And what I have learned now that I am a parent and I do coach and I've done a lot of training and education around that, is I'm teaching my kids now about the choices they have. I do have, rules and boundaries and a set of things that they need to follow and guidelines, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they also still have a choice, and they get to learn when they make a good choice and a bad choice, and of course it's hard as a parent because you don't want your kids to completely fail, but sometimes they need to do that so they can understand and learn how to process their choices now and know that they do have a choice in a way and with some things, right? Where years ago we didn't have that as kids. It was like we're the parents, it's our rules. We do, you do what we say because we're the parents, and there was not a whole lot of the well, what do you think about it? What is it you want to do? Type conversation. And so I think for me as a parent, that has now changed for me as I raise my kids, and we're starting to talk about college and looking at things, and they're only in sixth and fifth grade, but teaching them about the choices they have, out there.
Mhm. Yeah, it starting those conversations early is super helpful, and keeping those conversations going is also essential. I was talking with an acquaintance of mine this morning, and he was, asking me if he should go on and get an advanced degree, which is always an interesting conversation because my experience with grad school is that you get more than you bargained for.
Mhm,
A 2-year program sounds like it's doable, but then life gets in the way.
mhm, as it does.
Yes, as it does. You know, w here's another question for you. What leadership capabilities do you think are most essential right now, especially for women who are building businesses and careers?
I love this question. I come from the real estate industry. I am still in that industry, and with the market that we have had these last few years, I find more than ever, um, we need people that are adaptable, to the changes that are happening, and being able to pivot, when life happens or things change or things are not like how they were before, being able to adapt to the market and to what's happening in our lives and the seasons that we're in. Having the courage, to again say what you want, go out there and go after the things that you've been, that your heart desires and your dreams. Having a bit of humility, right?
Mhm.
What worked then is not working now. And sometimes I get, some realtors that will start a conversation with, well, I've been in the business, yada, 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 yada years. And to me, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of humility, right? Like,
No.
yes, yes, and, and so having a little bit of humility and going back and saying, I need to go back to school, or I need to go back to learn this, I need to go back and do this so I can continue to grow and be better again and adapt with what it is that I don't know so that I can still survive it in this business. Some of it is self-trust. I think leadership, people need to be able to trust their intuition and really quiet down enough to listen to what move do I feel like I want to make. I am that type of person. I do listen to my intuition, and oftentimes what I feel is in fact the right step I need to take. And so, even though slowing down is really hard in my world for me, it's not really my vocabulary. I do find that as time goes on, and of course, as I get older, slowing down is actually really important to give yourself time to listen to that intuition and trust deep down inside the choices that you want to make and trust that you're making the right move, the next step, and what is it that you want to do. And then having a strong, high emotional intelligence, I think is going to be super key. to have that self-awareness, and having that space to offer people grace and patience. Because again, we all show up with different experiences, with different struggles that we may not talk about. And so having that emotional intelligence to meet people where they are, I think is all of those things right now, I think is what we really need.
Mm, yeah, EQ is so crucial, especially um, with all of the changes we're seeing in the economy, um, the changes that we see with technology, and just the way people are working now. I see more and more people who have um, gone the solopreneur route, and even then, they've got multiple gigs.
Yes.
And we weren't prepared in our education to deal with something like that. It's something that life teaches you.
Yep.
My own journey as a solopreneur over the last year has been intense, um, very worthwhile, but I could not have imagined how it would transpire and where I would be right now. I just had to, grit my teeth, come up with a plan, and work my way through it all.
Yeah, and being a planner for me, it's a little hard sometimes to do that because you have to have faith, right? It's like you
Right.
need to have the plan, but you also have to have the faith. It's like you can't just have the faith and say, "Okay, great, I had faith and I prayed," or whatever you do around whatever faith you have, and then kind of sit back and wait. Just take that action. And to again, it is very hard. I completely understand. You can plan, but you can only plan but so much. Plan enough to know what steps you want to take, but leave yourself open and abundant to receiving the opportunities that you maybe didn't even think were going to happen or come to you, or like, hey, I didn't even know that this was a thing I really wanted to do. Wow, what an opportunity, right? But we have to be open enough to receive that and to see it, and then trust ourselves to take that next step if that's what we want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, trust is something that it's hard to maintain, especially with oneself.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of consistent exercise in trust building, because it's really easy to shatter that trust in oneself, I find.
Absolutely. I mean, I have had my fair share of mistakes that I've made over the
Mhm.
years. And I've shared those very publicly. I mean, like, all of the things that I do and talk about and teach are from my actual experiences, because I feel like that will help people coming up behind me. But it does make you question. I've had some mistakes that I've made that for a bit there, I was questioning my decision making. Like, how can I trust myself if I just made this one really bad decision? Right. And so it's learning that self-judgment about making mistakes is the wrong thing to do, obviously. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying, you're not working, you're not pushing for better. It certainly doesn't mean that you're failing. And we're not perfect, right? We're going to make those mistakes, and we just have to trust that that mistake is a lesson, and I was supposed to learn
Mhm.
something in that lesson, and then of course not make that same mistake again.
Yeah. Yeah, I make plenty of mistakes every day, I just try not to repeat them.
Yeah, because then it's a choice, right? If you continue to make the same mistake, then you're just doing it to yourself. So
Yeah, here's a side question. What mistakes do we see people making the most often, especially when it comes to trusting themselves?
I I think not trusting their intuition. For me
Okay.
personally, when I have made those big mistakes, it's because I didn't listen to the voice inside. And when I sit back now and think about the choice I made, I am deeply motivated by purpose. And when I go back to those mistakes I made those mistakes based on money I thought I was going to make, not necessarily the purpose and the legacy that this experience is going to leave behind for myself, my family, and everybody coming behind. And so I needed to keep again reminding myself, what is my motivation? What am I here for? And just keep asking myself those questions, because I didn't listen to my intuition and I made the wrong choice based on something that I want the money, of course. I mean, we want a for profit business, but the sole reason why I decided to do some of those things was because of money and not the purpose. And that's backwards for me. And so it's just, again, slowing down enough to listen to myself and my intuition and why am I making this move? Why do I want to take this opportunity? What does this actually mean for me and the people that I want to serve, and my legacy I want to leave behind? It's more purposeful than it is the income.
Mhm. That makes so much sense. So how do you see learning changing over the next few years? Mean, people seem to be wanting more meaning, more alignment, more balance. What's going to lead us to that?
Well, I think people are really into more of the on-demand stuff, like,
Okay.
the YouTube videos, right? Like, they don't wanna wait, and some people don't wanna go to college and do all that. They just like, "Teach me the stuff now. Teach me what you did, what mistakes you made so I can start building and find success faster." It's more on demand, I feel like. And then people can fit that in their schedules, right? They're not stuck at a university or in a classroom for so many times. Like, they can live, they can work, and they can learn at all in their own pace. And I feel like more people are gravitating towards that and wanting to learn from people who actually have done what they're trying to do and seeking out those people, asking for mentorship, doing the work and following the crumbs of success that people are leaving behind. Because they do want to curve a little bit of the time and find that success a little bit faster.
Hmm.
And it's not to say, going to college is it's not a waste of time, but it's when I was raised, it was like the only option we had, and I
Right.
think that there's so many other options now. And that's what I meant by choice is that you can if you want to, if that's the right fit, but there's also other options as well, depending on
Hmm.
where you want to go and how quickly you want to find success and what success means to you. And I feel like I meet more and more younger people that really want to retire at 50, and they're like, how
Yeah.
do I get to retirement at a much younger age so I can live my life and enjoy it and not wait until, you know, I can't even walk potentially, or I'm not able to go travel and do these things. Like people want that now, not later and after retirement.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh man, I wish I could remember the acronym for that movement about retiring early. But I see more and more chatter about that in Reddit and
Oh, yeah.
on YouTube, and it's a great goal. It's a lofty goal, um, and it requires a lot of discipline in finding that balance,
Mhm,
in finding that alignment. And it also means that people need to establish what their work and career mean for them,
mhm.
because it has to be more than a means to an end. It needs to be something fulfilling.
Absolutely, absolutely, and there's a level of financial literacy that they need to learn and understand,
Mhm.
right, to make that happen, and it does come with discipline and sacrifice. But I do find that people go from wanting this success at one point in their life to wanting to have more significance in what they're having, and that's kinda what I meant with the breakdown with the retirement thing and wanting that at a younger age. People are finding that
Mhm.
they want that significance, in their life, at a much younger age now than I think I've seen even just 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely been a swing in the way generations perceive, um, what we call retirement, and, retiring at 50 to me means that you're just moving into a different phase of your life.
Mhm,
Um, you know, I I I know I'm Generation X, and we were sold on the whole, retire in your 60s thing,
mhm.
and I'll do that. I'll get there.
Yeah.
Um, but it for the younger generations, they've got more options. It's possible to pull it off.
It is possible, and I think too, people are living longer, like, I
Yeah.
remember as a kid, people were dying at 65, 70 years old,
Uh-huh.
and that's not the case now, right? So it's like, how do I again build enough success and financial freedom so I can, the first half of my life is hustle and work and building all of that, and the second half of my life can be truly living and enjoying. If that's how people, want to design how they live, some people want both at the same time, and that's totally fine, right? They don't want to wait, but then again, that's their definition of success, and that's their definition of what they want their life to look like, and which everybody, is entitled to have. There's no wrong answer.
Mhm. Mhm. People need to define the answer that not only works for them, but fulfills their goals and vision. Um, but it really comes down to making those choices and having the building the discipline early on.
Mhm.
Um, and another thing that is I knew this was tossed out the window 30 or 40 years ago, but the idea of organizational loyalty to the employee is it's toast. It's gone.
Oh, and that breaks my heart.
It does. It does.
As a child, I that's what I envisioned. Like, I envisioned owning a business where I can take care of people and they can look at what I've built as home and they take care of me, because I feel like there comes a point where people forget about the little people, right? They forget that without
Mhm.
the employees working and dedicating their life and their time to building what your company, you wouldn't have that. And it now has grown as I've gotten older to I want to build that and take care of people, but I also want people to feel like inspired to say, I wanna open up my own business now, I want to help you do that. Would mean you leaving my company, but I want you to want to do that. I want you to feel like, "Hey, I can do this too, and I feel so supported in what I wanna do." Like, that's what I wanna build. I do wanna have that, loyalty, but I also want it to be where if this is something you wanted to do, allow me to help you do that,
Mhm.
you've gotten me here, I wanna help you get there. Gosh, I just miss it, and I hate that we don't have that anymore, like, it breaks my heart. Like,
Yeah, it breaks my heart too because I think for some people, the structure that organizational loyalty provides is necessary and welcome, and it's part of their journey.
yeah.
And it seems to have been ripped apart. Perhaps one path to that is having your own business, but that means at some point you've got to make it sustainable.
Mhm,
And you need to build it so that the business will outlast you.
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's where I see a lot of possibility is um, educating people on how to build that legacy. And it's not necessarily a legacy for their families. It could be a legacy for their teammates in the organization so that
yes.
they can take the reins when they're ready to chase their dreams within the construct of that organization and make it their own.
Yeah, and that was why I wanted to get into my I've always wanted to own a business as a child, but
Hmm.
I worked in retail management before I got into real estate, and my decision on not going back was solely because I knew that one day that my job would ask me to choose my job over my family.
Right.
There was no question, and that is what I hated. That is what I want to not build, right? Like, I want people to feel comfortable, like, "I need a day off," or, "I have this family thing." Great, go do that, right? The stress that came with trying to ask for vacation that I earned, or the stress, like, "Hey, I need a PTO day," like, I would almost get sick having to, like, ask, like, the fear of needing that time, yet I earned it. I hate it, and I didn't wanna have myself in that position where I had to choose, and I don't want to build something where people have that fear. I want people to
Mhm.
truly have a life. They work for me or they work here, but have a life, like be with your family, go to the things like, we will work it out and figure it out. Like, I just that to me just means so much. I've been so blessed to be able to be there for my kids and what I do. That I want other people to be able to experience that and not feel like they can't have a family, or if they have a family, are they going to question my loyalty still because my kid got sick? Like,
Right.
I just can't fathom doing that to people, and I just again, it breaks my heart, and I decided to leave because I knew that that would happen to me one day.
Hmm. And I love your sense of doing what's right, not only for you, but for your family and for the organization that you're with.
Mhm,
We have to select what we're going to stand for
mhm,
and how we go about doing that.
yeah,
And that's one of the biggest lessons that we can learn as professionals and as people too.
Yeah, and that's why I tell when I teach my classes and I'm helping and coaching clients, it's like more is never the answer, right? I don't need more time from you. I don't need more things from you. I need exactly what you're good at, and I so you get quality work in a short amount of time, right? Because then that alleviates people from the hustle and bustle, and they truly get to find some sort of balance or harmony that they're seeking, you know? As long as, like we're all focused, we're doing what we need to do, we're hitting our things, the rest of it is like, go live life,
Mm,
like go enjoy life before it's too late and then you can't enjoy it.
right, right. Um, that is such a powerful message because the pandemic's a great example. No one saw that coming.
Mhm,
Um, and all the changes we've seen in society in the last year, especially here in the United States, that
mhm.
we did not see this coming either.
Right, and then the very next year, I lost my sister unexpectedly, and
Oh
so
my
the
goodness.
all of that changed for me, it just not kind of what I've shared has changed because that has always been something within me, but it's made it that much stronger.
Mhm.
We don't know how much time we have. One of my favorite quotes is, time is the only currency we spend without ever knowing the balance. And instead of
Right.
people living their life with, here's how much time, I have, how about how much time you have left, right? Like I came across a picture one day and I forget why I was looking for pictures, but of my sister on her sweet 16th birthday. Had I known that she had lived half her life that day, the next 16 years would have been completely different, right? We don't get to know that information. And
Mhm.
so that has changed again the way I show up and what success looks like for me and what is it that I want for my life and my family. And it's less of the hustle and more of the happiness, things that fill me. I can still be successful but still have my family too at the same time.
And that's that sense of balance is so important. Um, if you could change the way people learn and grow, what would you do differently?
I would encourage people to follow their values first,
Mhm.
and then the hustle a second. I'm all about alignment and values. And like I just believe that people come to me as whole people, right? They may not have all the pieces in the right place, but they're whole people and they know what they value and they know what they want. And it's sometimes people just need permission to say, "Hey, start here. Start where you are. Start with what matters to you and what you value. The rest will then come." And because I think people oftentimes reverse it and they hustle, 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 and then they wake up frustrated, burnt out, not working with their ideal client, and it's because they ignored everything about who they are and what they wanted. And if you just reversed it, you wouldn't be so burnt out. You wouldn't feel so defeated. You would actually work with the people that value the same things you did, and you could get to where you wanted to go a little bit faster. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And we get in our way so often. We get in
Mhm.
our own way. Um, so how do we change learning and design it to honor the different seasons of life, of energy and capacity while still being high performers?
Well, first of all, I think people need to have a flexible approach, right? There should not be I hate to should on people, but it doesn't have to be pressure and rigid. It needs to be, I find the more flexibility I give in my time and my calendar and how I'm showing up and what I'm doing, the less friction I feel, within my days. Having awareness around my energy and when I have the best energy or when I don't have enough energy and I've got to tap onto somebody else and ask for the help and those kinds of things. Um, Integrating your life. So in real estate, and in some businesses, we provide a service. And I tell people you are your business and your business is you. And so if you've got to integrate the two. Like when I first started in real estate, I felt like I had three different versions of myself and I was dying. I had to be this person during these hours, this person during these hours, and then I couldn't tell people I had kids and so I had to pretend to be like this. And the moment that I just said screw it all and I just need to be who I am and this is my life, the better people I got in my life to work with, and people respected the boundaries that I placed, and people respected my time, and everything for me started to turn around then. So, which is really integrating my life, which is why I'm like very family first and then
Mhm.
business second. Now, are there times where you have to sacrifice? Sure. Like there's nights where, I do have to work with a client because they're only available in the evening and it does take away from the kids, but it's not the norm. It's not I do this all the time and I'm sacrificing that kind of time. I think the other thing too is knowing that it's always going to be progress over perfection.
Yeah.
You're not always going to get it right, but as long as you're taking forward movement steps, you're heading in the right direction, and it's your path and just focus on the small steps. And then the last thing I would say is having a structure in your support, right? Having personal support, having your business support, having that in your life, because I feel like we do need that quite a bit when you own your own business. And having this person that you go to for this thing, right? Having your spouse that you go to for this thing if you have a spouse or whatever. It's like having that support around you as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the support network cannot be underestimated.
Oh, no. Gosh, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the people behind me, like, people supporting me, carrying me, being a shoulder to cry on, tapping me on the shoulder when they say, "I see more in you. I'm gonna give you this opportunity."
Right.
I want to give you this opportunity. Or the days that, we lose a client that we really, really wanted or a deal fell apart and, having the support there. As long as I've been in the business, do I get past the nose a little quicker? Sure, but I'm still human and they hurt. And
Mhm.
there's still certain things that I really, really really wanted, and I
Yeah.
just didn't get it this time.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts for our listeners and viewers, Melissa?
Um, I just want people again to know that you are whole. Everything you need, you already have within yourself. Give yourself time to ask the hard questions, ask the questions you're afraid of. Allow yourself to dream big and imagine what your life could look like, the best case scenario, not always the worst case. I know sometimes it's easier to say, well, all of these things could go wrong, but give yourself space to dream, what if it all went right? And just take one step there without judgment, without any self-judgment. If there's something you want to do, I believe in you and I know you can do it. You just got to have that belief in yourself and take one step.
Mhm. So important to remember. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us today, Melissa. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. And viewers and listeners, thanks for joining us on another step on the perfect route.